Dr. Marcus Hale had not slept. The images replayed in his mind as vividly as if he had sat through the films again. The ambassador's trembling voice, the fainting attendant, Victor's piercing accusation. Diplomacy was fragile at the best of times. Now it felt like a cracked glass, one more tremor away from shattering. The alien delegation had retreated to their quarters, refusing further engagement for the night. Hale spent the hours drafting explanations, footnotes, cultural essays, anything to bridge the chasm horror had opened. When dawn broke on Luna Station's artificial cycle, he had composed 10 separate lectures, none of which he believed would change alien minds. The knock at his office door was sharp and deliberate. Lieutenant Cross entered without waiting for permission, carrying a mug of steaming coffee as though it were a trophy. His expression was wry. "You look like hell," Cross said. Hale pinched the bridge of his nose. Appropriate, considering what our guests think of us. Cross set the mug down and leaned against the wall. "You're overthinking it. They're rattled, sure. But maybe that's good. If they think Earth is crawling with demons and knife-wielding maniacs, maybe they'll think twice before pushing us around." Hale's glare was sharp enough to cut. "Diplomacy isn't a bluffing game, Jonah. Fear is not respect. It's protection," Cross countered. "Ask any soldier, better they overestimate the threat than underestimate it." Before Hale could reply, his comm unit chimed. The alien delegation requested his presence. The conference room was cold, its lighting harsher than human design would allow. Ambassador Threxeval sat rigid, his scales dulled, his crest drooping. Elder Victor stood beside him, posture stiff with indignation. Their attendants formed a semicircle, recording devices pulsing faintly. "Dr. Hale," Threxeval began, his voice brittle, "we have spent the night revisiting your stories." Hale swallowed. "Then you understand they are fictions. Nothing more." Victor's eyes narrowed. "Fiction requires seeds of truth. The mind cannot weave what it has never touched. Your horror serial killers, restless spirits, worlds drenched in blood, they are drawn from experience." Hale shook his head. "They're metaphors. They externalize fear so we can study it, even laugh at it. They are exaggerations, not histories." Threxeval tapped a claw on the table, a sound like a knife against glass. "And yet, your citizens consume them with ease. We observed them, entire theaters filled with your kind, laughing, shrieking, yet unbroken. Your people endure images that would fracture the minds of others. This calmness frightens us more than the visions themselves." Cross, who had insisted on attending, leaned forward. "Maybe that's because humans are built to handle fear. We've lived with predators, war, disease. We don't crumble at shadows. We stare them down." "Or," Victor hissed, "you are so steeped in death that terror is your nourishment." The words struck Hale harder than he expected. He forced his voice steady. "Elder, I promise you Earth is not ruled by monsters. Horror films are exercises of imagination. Nothing more. Imagination." Victor repeated, tasting the word like poison. "Then imagination is your weapon. And it is one we cannot comprehend." The meeting dissolved into silence, the weight of mistrust thicker than the station's recycled air. Hours later, Hale escorted the aliens to a public cinema in the Colony Dome, desperate to prove his sincerity. Rows of humans, families even, filled the theater. Popcorn aromas drifted. Laughter echoed. When the horror film began, the aliens watched not the screen, but the audience. They saw children giggle at jump scares, adults smile after screams, friends lean into one another with amusement. To the aliens, it was a ritual, a species gathering to embrace terror, treating fear as entertainment, consuming horror as nourishment. Their unease deepened with every relaxed chuckle, every casual sip of soda, When the film ended, Threxivil rose abruptly. "You claim it is fiction, yet your people feast on it as if it were joy. No sane mind takes comfort in fear." Unless his voice dropped to a rasp. Unless fear itself is your companion. Hale's protests fell flat. The aliens left the cinema in silence, their frills shivering with what Hal recognized as dread. Back in the embassy, Cross clapped him on the shoulder. "You showed them the truth. Didn't help much, did it?" Hale sank into a chair. "I'm not sure what they saw." "They saw what we are," Cross said. His smile was faint, almost grim. "And maybe that's enough." That night, the delegation convened in their private quarters. Through the thin walls, faint sounds carried a rising chorus of alien voices, urgent and fearful. Hale stood in the corridor, listening. He couldn't understand the words, but the cadence was clear. Warning, caution, retreat. Hours later, a report reached him through unofficial channels. Ambassador Threxivil had sent a coded message home. Earth hides predators beyond comprehension. Withdraw before it is too late. Hale stared at the transmission printout, the characters etched like scars across the page. He realized then that no lecture, no documentary, no behind-the-scenes footage could repair what had been unleashed. To the aliens, horror was no longer fiction. It was revelation. He folded the report, hands trembling. "We've lost them." He whispered. Cross, standing at his shoulder, exhaled slowly. "Or maybe we've gained something." Fear can travel farther than diplomacy. Hale turned on him, anger and despair mixing in his eyes. "This isn't a strategy, Jonah. This is a fracture. If they believe we're a world of nightmares, they'll treat us as one. Do you understand what that means?" Cross met his gaze without flinching. "Yeah. It means no one's going to invade a nightmare." The words lingered, heavy with truth, heavy with consequence. Hale looked back at the sealed alien quarters. He could almost hear their whispers echoing, already turning human fiction into galactic legend. And legends, he feared, were far harder to erase than truth. Dr. Marcus Hale adjusted the cuffs of his gray suit as though ceremony might shield him from awkwardness. The small auditorium at the United Earth Embassy on Luna Station had been converted into a makeshift theater for their guests' rows of reclining chairs, dim amber lighting, and a holoscreen shimmering with static, waiting to come alive. It was meant to be a celebration of cultural exchange, a simple window into humanity's imagination. Hale wondered, not for the first time, whether this was a mistake. The aliens had requested art, not music, not sculpture, but moving images. They wanted to see stories, the kind humans crafted for themselves. Hale had wrestled with the archives, trying to choose carefully. In the end, he had curated a sampler, a sweeping drama, a war film, a comedy. And against the caution of his colleagues, one entry from the horror genre. Across the aisle, Lieutenant Jonah Cross leaned against the wall, arms folded, his uniform sharp as glass. Younger by 2 decades, he radiated the skepticism Hale kept buried under practiced diplomacy. "You're sure about this?" Cross asked in a low voice, nodding at the hollow projector. "You really think showing aliens people being butchered on screen is cultural outreach?" "It isn't butchery, Lieutenant," Hale replied evenly. "It's symbolism, tension, catharsis. They asked for what shapes us. Pretending horror doesn't exist would be lying." Cross smirked. "Maybe lying's safer." The doors opened with a hiss, and the delegation entered. Ambassador Threxivil led them, his scaled brow adorned with silver crests denoting rank. Behind him walked Elder Victor, taller, thinner, his age betrayed by the faint translucence of his carapace, where Threxivil's movements were measured and diplomatic. Victor's eyes darted with perpetual curiosity, cataloging everything. For attendants followed, silent, recording every moment. Ambassador Hale greeted warmly, inclining his head. "Welcome to humanity's theater." Threxeval's jaw flexed the alien approximation of a polite smile. "We are honored. Your kind's visual arts intrigue us. Images woven with sound, bound in time. No other culture has developed this method. It's our way of dreaming in daylight," Hale said, gesturing to the seats. They settled into their places, bodies shifting awkwardly against cushions designed for human anatomy. Cross took his position at the rear, his posture radiating suspicion. Hale dimmed the lights, and the screen flickered to life. The first selection was cautious, a quiet psychological piece, more suspense than terror. On screen, a man wandered. An empty house, shadows stretching, floorboards groaning. The aliens leaned forward, fascinated, their unblinking eyes reflecting the glow. "This is fiction?" Threxeval asked softly. "Yes," Hale confirmed. "Actors, sets, imagination. None of it real. The film unspooled." Tension mounted. Unseen threats whispered through sound design, and the alien delegation shifted uneasily. One attendant released a faint trill, a sound Hale would later recognize as distress. When the credits rolled, silence filled the room. Then Elder Victor broke it. "Why invent terror? What purpose does dread serve?" "To explore ourselves," Hale answered. "Fear teaches. It reflects dangers, choices, survival. We externalize the darkness so we can face it." Cross muttered under his breath. "Or maybe we just like scaring each other." The second film began, and this one pulled no punches. It was from humanity's slasher-era blood, Blade's relentless pursuit. On screen, screams pierced the auditorium. The aliens recoiled visibly, claws gripping armrests. One hissed an alarm, another's frills snapped open like warning flags. This occurred," Threxeval demanded. "No," Hale insisted. "Quickly, it's invention, a story." "Yet your species imagines such cruelty," Victor countered, voice trembling with disbelief. "Violence for spectacle, pain as entertainment." Cross allowed himself a thin smile. He was enjoying their discomfort more than he should. By the time the film ended, two attendants were whispering rapidly in their tongue, their tones sharp with agitation. Threxeval raised a hand to silence them, but his own scales were rippling. "With unease, we requested your dreams," the ambassador said carefully. "Instead, you show us nightmares." "They're only shadows," Hale pressed, keeping his voice calm. "Nightmares are safe when confined to story." But Victor leaned forward, mandibles flexing. "Nightmares are never birthed from nothing. The mind cannot conjure what the world has not offered. If you imagine monsters, it is because you have seen them." Hale opened his mouth to argue, but the holoscreen ignited with the third selection. He had chosen it for its artistry, its reputation as a masterpiece of supernatural horror. Shadows writhed, lights flickered, voices echoed with demonic possession. As the film descended into its crescendo of terror, the aliens began to fracture. One attendant bolted from the room, a high keening cry echoing down the corridor. Another collapsed, trembling, his body curling tight as though shielding against unseen claws. Threxeval surged to his feet, eyes wide. "Enough." His voice cracked, the sound startling in its raw fear. Hale froze the projection. Silence pressed in, heavy as stone. Cross's smirk had vanished, replaced by grim interest. The ambassador's chest heaved, and his words came ragged. "These are not inventions. These are warnings. Beasts, spirits, horrors that stalk your kind. No species invents such things for joy." Hale spread his hands, pleading. "Ambassador, I assure you it's fiction. Humans imagine the impossible. We build fear into stories precisely because it is unreal. Victor rose beside him, towering, his voice resonant with conviction. Unreal or concealed? You humans dress your truths in lies. You feed on terror as though it sustains you. If such visions spring from your minds, then either your world is worse than any battlefield, or your people harbor nightmares within themselves. Cross finally spoke, his voice low but cutting. Maybe both. The delegation did not wait for further explanation. Threxavel gave a sharp gesture, and his attendants hurried to gather the stricken. Victor lingered a moment, eyes gleaming in the dim light. "Tell me, Dr. Hale," he said, his tone almost pitying, "if horror is your fiction, what then is your truth?" He turned and followed the others out. The doors sealed with a hiss, leaving only silence, the faint smell of ozone, and the frozen frame of the film's final scene, a pale face, screaming into darkness. Hale stood motionless, his throat tight. Cross's voice broke the stillness. "Well," the lieutenant said, "I think we just scared the hell out of them." Hale rubbed his temples, suddenly weary. "You don't understand, Jonah. If they believe what they just saw, we may have terrified them in ways we can't undo." Cross glanced at the door where the aliens had vanished. Good. Maybe that'll keep them honest. But Hale wasn't convinced. As the projector flickered and died, he felt the first crack in something far larger than cultural misunderstanding. Somewhere in that silent corridor, alien whispers were already turning fiction into legend. And legends, he knew, had a way of lasting longer than truth. Dr. Marcus Hale paced the embassy's observation deck, watching the alien fleet through the transparent dome. Sleek vessels hung against the black canvas of space, lights flickering like wary eyes. For days they had hovered in silence, but now their engines pulsed with readiness. Departure was coming, and with it, the unraveling of everything he had worked to build. Lieutenant Cross leaned casually against the railing, as though the sight of allies abandoning orbit were of no concern. "They're packing up," he said. "Can't say I'll miss the looks they've been giving us, like we're infected with something." "We are not infected," Hale snapped, too sharply. "We're misunderstood." "There's a difference." Cross tilted his head. "Misunderstanding or not, the result's the same. They're leaving. Maybe it's for the best." Hale rubbed at his temples. The tension in his chest was constant now, a weight he could not set down. If they retreat believing Earth is cursed or dangerous, it will ripple through every alliance. Trade will halt, treaties will collapse. Fear spreads faster than truth. The sound of the door opening silenced them both. Ambassador Threxavel entered, his movements stiff, his eyes downcast. Behind him came Elder Victor, posture rigid. With authority, and a new figure, Commander Rollinor armored, the sigils of military command etched into his plates. The presence of a warrior confirmed Hale's worst fears. This was no longer diplomacy. It was strategy. Threxavel spoke first. "Dr. Hale, Lieutenant Cross, we come not to insult your hospitality, but to clarify our position. Our fleets are preparing to withdraw. Our council debates whether contact with your species should be severed entirely." Hale's voice cracked despite his effort to control it. "Ambassador, please. You must see that what you witnessed was art, not truth. Humanity does not consort with demons. We do not worship slaughter." Rollinor's gaze cut through him. "Yet you reenact these things. You build temples of light and sound to summon terror and call it joy. If they are false, why display them? If they are true, why survive them?" Cross answered before Hale could. "Because that's what humans do. We survive. We don't need the things to be real for them to test us. We face fear and make it smaller by staring it down." Victor S. mandibles clicked in disdain. "Or you spread it like a contagion, infecting even us with dread. What species chooses to cultivate nightmares? Hale stepped forward, desperation sharpening his tone. A species that understands the value of confronting darkness. By inventing horrors, we master fear instead of letting it master us. But the words slid off them like rain against stone. Threxavel's scales shimmered with unease. Your explanations soothe us less than your films disturb us. What imagination births, perhaps reality hides. We cannot risk discovering which is true. Rollinor set a recording crystal on the table, activating a projection of the horror films they had watched. Scenes flickered shadows in haunted houses, blood-stained killers, children screaming in darkness. The aliens turned their eyes away, but Rollinor forced himself to watch, as if enduring pain to make a point. "This is what will be remembered," he said coldly. "Not your speeches, not your reassurances. These visions will spread among the stars, warnings of a world where fear itself thrives. We will tell others, Earth is a place no sane traveler should go." Hale's stomach clenched. He reached for the device, but Victor intercepted, lifting it away. "It is decided," the elder declared. "Contact with your kind is a risk to grave. Better to wall ourselves from your influence than allow your horrors to seed in our minds." Cross gave a humorless laugh. "So that's it? You run because we scare you." Rollinor's gaze snapped to him. "Do not mistake caution for weakness, human. We have fought wars across a dozen galaxies, crushed empires, ended species. But none of those foes threaten the mind itself. Your people wield fear as though it were a tool that makes you more dangerous than armies." The words hung heavy. In the air, Hale felt the fracture widening with every breath. No argument could bridge it now. The delegation departed, leaving only silence in their wake. Hale slumped into a chair, his hands trembling. "It's over," he whispered. "They'll spread their fear of us to every corner of the network. We'll be marked as untouchable." Cross remained standing, arms folded, his expression unreadable. Untouchable isn't the worst thing to be. Think about it. They won't invade. They won't exploit. They'll stay away because they're too afraid to get close. Hale's head jerked up. At what cost? Isolation, trade gone. Partnerships shattered. Do you want Earth to be a pariah? Cross shrugged. Better pariah than prey. Hale opened his mouth to argue, but no words came. The image of the trembling attendant, the keening cry echoing down the corridor, returned to him. He realized, with a sick twist of certainty, that fear had already taken root. And once rooted, it grew fast. The following day, the alien fleet broke orbit. Their vessels aligned, engines flaring, and one by one they slipped into the folds of faster-than-light space. Hale stood at the viewport, watching them vanish, feeling each departure like a door slamming shut. In the silence that followed, "Come alert" pulsed. Hale accepted the transmission. Elder Victor's face appeared, vast and grim. His words were measured, but every syllable dripped finality. "Dr. Hale, hear this and remember. We came seeking art and found terror. We came seeking friends and found a people who conjure nightmares as easily as breath. Our records will show Earth is not to be trusted. Your stories reveal more than your words ever will. No sane species will tread upon your soil again." The transmission ended. Hale closed his eyes, a hollow ache settling in his chest. For decades, he had believed humanity's imagination was its greatest gift. Tonight, it had become its curse. Cross joined him at the viewport, his reflection sharp. In the glass. "Maybe that's how it has to be," he said softly. "Let them think we're monsters. Safer that way." Hale didn't respond. He could only stare into the empty stretch of stars, wondering how long it would take for the legend to spread and how much darker it might grow in the retelling. The days after the alien fleet's departure were quieter than Hale could bear. Luna Station's wide corridors and glass domes felt cavernous, stripped of purpose now that the visitors had gone. Official reports trickled in, each one sharpening. The blade of despair. Trade agreements suspended. Cultural exchanges canceled. Negotiations frozen in place. The stars themselves seemed to recoil, pushing Earth back into solitude. Dr. Marcus Hale spent those days combing through transmissions, desperate to salvage something, some thread of hope he could pull to weave relations together again. But the messages were uniform in tone, careful, polite, and cold. He saw in every word the shadow of Victor's warning spreading like a contagion. Earth is a graveyard that dreams. The phrase was already echoing across the interstellar network. Lieutenant Cross appeared in his office without announcement, as he always did, bearing no sympathy for Hale's exhaustion. "You're chasing ghosts," he said flatly, dropping into the chair across from Hale. "They're not coming back." They made up their minds. Hale looked up, eyes bloodshot. "Then I'll change their minds. I have to. This is my life's work, Jonah. Bridging divides, building trust. I can't just let it all collapse." Cross leaned forward, his voice low but steady. "Maybe this isn't collapse. Maybe it's transformation. You're trying to fix something that might actually be protecting us." Hale frowned, the weight of his frustration pressing down. "You mean the fear? You can't seriously think it's an asset?" Cross met his gaze evenly. "Why not? Think about it. No one's going to risk a war with us now. They'll hesitate to exploit us, colonize us, interfere with us. Us as dangerous, unpredictable. Fear is a stronger shield than treaties." Hale's breath hitched in disbelief. "That's not diplomacy, Jonah. That's intimidation. It makes us pariahs, not partners." Cross's eyes darkened. "Better pariah than prey. You keep clinging to the idea that the galaxy wants to understand us. But maybe the truth is, they only respect what they fear." The argument hung between them, too jagged for reconciliation. Hale turned back to his console, refusing to answer. The following week brought confirmation of what Hale most dreaded. The Galactic Council formally announced Earth would be listed as a restricted world. Travel discouraged, alliances suspended. No penalties, no sanctions, simply a warning broadcast into every star system. Approach Earth at your peril. When Hale read the proclamation, his heart twisted. Words mattered to him, and these words carried the weight of exile. Yet as the announcement spread, something unexpected stirred back home. Humans laughed. News feeds on Earth filled with commentary. Comedians mocking alien cowardice, citizens throwing horror film marathons as acts of defiance. Memes spread faster than the proclamation itself, images of monsters captioned with "Welcome to Earth." Some even proposed turning October's Halloween into an interstellar holiday. A message to the galaxy. Humanity was not ashamed of its imagination. Cross found Hale in the embassy lounge, a news screen flickering before them. On it, a crowd in New York gathered in costumes of vampires, killers, and ghosts, chanting into the cameras. "Boo. See?" Cross said with a grin. "They're not afraid of being feared. They're owning it. We didn't lose anything. We gained a legend." Hale shook his head, unable to share the joy. "They're celebrating isolation. They don't see the doors closing." "Maybe those doors needed closing," Cross replied. "Maybe humanity's strength isn't in convincing aliens we're harmless. Maybe it's in reminding them we're not." Hale was about to argue when a transmission request interrupted. It was Ambassador Threxeval. The alien's face filled the screen. Wearier than Hale remembered, scales dulled, eyes shadowed. His voice carried no triumph, only resignation. Dr. Hale, I speak to you unofficially, without council sanction. I could not leave without saying this. I regret what we saw. I regret how we responded. But understand, fear is not a choice. It is survival. When we looked at your stories, we did not see art. We saw memory. And when we looked into your eyes as you watched them, we saw no fear. That terrified us most of all. Hale leaned forward, desperate. Ambassador, it was art. You must believe that. Threxavel shook his head slowly. Perhaps, but your people live with shadows as though they are companions. If imagination births such horrors, what will your reality one day produce? Question will haunt us long after treaties are forgotten. He paused, gaze softening. I will step down from my post. I cannot continue after what I witnessed. I wish you peace, Marcus Hale, but I doubt your species will ever find it among the stars. The transmission ended. Hale sat in silence, grief rising like a tide. A man who had once believed in connection was now forced to confront the abyss of alien fear. Yet even as despair clung to him, Cross spoke, his tone almost gentle. He's wrong. Peace isn't what we need. Survival is. And survival sometimes means being the monster in someone else's story. The weeks that followed proved Cross's words prophetic. Reports filtered back from distant sectors. Rival empires canceling raids on human colonies. Pirates avoiding Earth's shipping lanes. Border skirmishes halting without explanation. Where diplomacy had failed, terror succeeded. One evening, Hal stood before the holoscreen, watching a live broadcast from Earth. A new festival had begun. Sprawling across city, citizens draped in costumes, films projected onto skyscrapers. Music thundering through streets. It was not fear that bound them together, but pride. They were a people unafraid of their nightmares, a people who could turn shadows into celebration. Doc Cross joined him, sipping from a flask. You see it yet? A tear isn't just a weapon, it's a banner. We've been underestimated for centuries. Now the galaxy finally sees what we are. Hale's voice was quiet. And what are we, Jonah? Monsters. Cross's eyes gleamed. No, survivors. The only species that can make its nightmares into something worth laughing at. That's what? They don't understand. That's what scares them most. The thought settled in Hale's chest, heavy but undeniable. Humanity had not chosen this reputation, but it had claimed them nonetheless. The galaxy now believed Earth was haunted by horrors beyond comprehension. Perhaps that was a curse. Perhaps it was protection. Perhaps, impossibly, it was both. Hale stepped closer to the viewport, staring at the endless stars. Somewhere out there, other civilizations were already whispering, already reshaping humanity into myth. He could almost hear their voices. Earth, the nightmare world. The graveyard that dreams. The species that feeds on fear, and for the first time, he wondered if that myth might outlast the truth. Cross's voice broke his reverie, low and amused. You know, Marcus, we've been trying to find humanity's greatest weapon for centuries. Ships, guns, armies. Turns out it's none of those. Hale turned, his voice weary. Then what is it? Cross lifted his flask in a mock toast, smirking. Imagination. The word lingered, sharp as steel and soft as smoke. Hale let it sink into him, no longer resisting. Perhaps Jonah was right. Perhaps imagination, with all its horrors, was the shield humanity had always carried. That night, in the quiet of his quarters, Hale finally let himself smile, faint but real. The galaxy might fear Earth, might avoid it, might brand it cursed, but it would never forget it. Humanity had become legend, and legends had power. And somewhere, far away, In the silence between stars, an alien traveler would think twice before setting a course for the blue planet called Earth.